About 1 minute, Carol.
Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. We're delighted you could join us for this service. Our mission at Sunnyhill is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. My name is Bradley Convis, and I'm proud to serve as a worship associate for this congregation. If you're a newcomer or visitor to our congregation, please go to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says New to Sunnyhill. There you can receive more information about our congregation and sign up to receive our weekly email newsletter. Today's services explore the concept of covenant and ask such questions as, What are the most important promises that we make to one another? And how do we call ourselves and others back to these promises when they are ignored or forgotten? Our opening words today were written by Erica Hewitt. To be a Unitarian Universalist means that we'll never be done with the work. The work of telling the truth about oppression, the work of resisting any laws, policies, or practices that deny anyone their humanity, the work of stubbornly seeking out the spark of the divine in each other, no matter what, the work of creating heaven on earth. To be a Unitarian Universalist also means we're not alone in the work. We're not alone because of our promises to love one another. We're not alone because we are companions on the journey. We grow into allies, helping one another get free. Because none of us is truly free until we are all free. Now we're going to light our chalice. If you could say along with me, we light our chalice as a symbol of the light we share with one another on this journey toward freedom for all.
Good morning. Our opening hymn is When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing.
Thanks, Jim. My name is Mark Mortimer, and I am excited to chair and kick off our annual Stewardship Committee, also known as our Canvas, this year. My wife Elizabeth and I have been proud members of Sunnyhill for the past 24 years. Our 3 children, Madeline, Simon, and Lucinda, were born and raised in this church. Elizabeth and I have both served on the board of trustees, helped on various committees, fundraising, RE, just to name a few. To say that Sunnyhill has played an important part of our lives would be a vast understatement. And although most of us haven't been inside the church building in the last year and a half, Sunnyhill has continued to support us throughout the pandemic, giving us strength, spiritual strength, and connection. The church's overall financial needs have not decreased. Funding is still critical to our ongoing and overall success. I'd like to take a few minutes to reflect on the past year, where we are at today, and ultimately how stewardship provides the foundation for our future. It's been a challenging time for all of us. COVID has touched each of us in so many ways. Personally, my family leaned on the Sunnyhill community as we struggled to make sense of my mother-in-law's death from this terrible virus. The caring committee was like an angel on call, and we are so grateful. Reverend Jim delivered a moving and meaningful virtual memorial. We directed much of our sorrow, anger, and frustrations at the time to the awareness of this virus. We told everyone we knew to make it real. We also directed our energies toward political and social justice causes. Sunnyhill was and always has been a center of action and initiative for us. All of us have experienced some loss from COVID. This pandemic has upended our daily lives and has brought a mix of emotions for all of us. It's been like a roller coaster, a really bad roller coaster. Throughout all of this chaos, the one constant in our lives has been this community, Sunnyhill. We embrace the online virtual services and coffee and conversations to connect with many of you. As vaccines rolled out, we were thankful to spend some time with you again in small gatherings. And this summer, the outdoor services really helped us to return to some sense of normalcy. The work of this church, the support in all of these services, and the value it provides me, you, and our greater community, never hesitated, never stopped. Our staff continues to work diligently to deliver incredible content and meet our spiritual needs. Reverend Jim has navigated the ups and downs of presenting Sunday service virtually without a hiccup. He's conducted weddings, memorial services, and pastoral care. Jen, who's constantly thinking outside of the box in order to juggle all the priorities and to offer uninterrupted religious education, as well as support with being our in-house technology go-to. Bethany continues to connect with virtual visitors to our services and welcome new members to our church. In fact, I believe we have another 10 or 12 new members joining us in the coming month. Mary Pratt has stepped into her role as music director, adding beautiful arrangements and programming to our Sunday services. An incredible amount of church volunteers give countless hours of their time, energy, and spirit to ensure Sunnyhill's support continues for the rest of us. So this brings me to present day. The church doesn't have its usual renters. A lot of the dynamics of our financial model have changed. We don't have a lot of the fundraisers that we normally do that honestly help to prop up some of our operational expenses. So we continue to struggle to maintain this community that we have. And this is really what the message is behind this this canvas. We have utility bills, and we still, despite not being in the building, we still have to write our checks to the utility companies. We have mortgage payments and debt service. John Armstrong and Ed and this incredible facilities facilities team has been busier than ever with ongoing maintenance and improvements. That hasn't changed. We continue to pay our annual UUA dues for each of our members as well, and that is an important part of the broader community that we're all part of. Sunnyhill is the largest and most viable UU congregation in the greater Pittsburgh area. Heck, we even pulled off an amazing pumpkin patch last month, selling out in 2 weeks, half the time as previous years. It was something that this community really gathered around and made happen last minute as soon as the truck arrived, and we ran at it hard for 2 weeks. This is what the energy of this congregation can do. And this is where we need your help again as we chart the course for 2022. I'm going to ask each of you to reflect on your own story over this past year. When you make your 2022 pledge to Sunnyhill, make it personal. Elizabeth and I will dedicate our pledge gift this year to her mother, Tilly Thompson, and to this incredible love and support this congregation gave us in those difficult and dark days. You'll receive an email this week with instructions on how to pledge. The process remains the same as it has been in past years. We would ask that you please reply by December 1st with your 2022 pledge amount, as the board will need this information to propose a balanced budget on the December 12th annual budget meeting. If you're a new member, if you have any questions or would like to discuss Sunnyhill's finances in more detail prior to the meeting, simply reach out to me, Reverend Jim, Bethany, any of the staff, and we will follow up. Thank you for continuing to be a vital part of our wonderful congregation, and here's to 2022. Thank you.
There was once a crow who was very hungry. Flying over the tops of trees, it spotted a large, tasty-looking walnut growing from one of the tallest branches below. Seeing the makings of a fine supper, the crow swooped down and plucked the dangling walnut and held it triumphantly in his beak. The crow flapped its wings happily and began to think about how best to break open the shell of the walnut. Meanwhile, on the ground below the crow, an equally hungry mouse saw everything that had happened and decided that it wanted that same walnut for itself. With a plan that was clever, though not particularly kind, the mouse called up to the crow high in the tree. "Say there, friend crow, what's that in your beak?" The crow, who was hungry enough by now that it wasn't thinking all of its decisions through very well, I know that feeling, called back, "I found a very nice walnut and I'm going to eat it." Have you ever tried to talk with your mouth full? It's not pretty. When the crow opened its mouth to say all that, the walnut fell out of it and it dropped to the ground, just as the mouse hoped that it would. But the mouse didn't count on where the walnut would land when it fell. It hit the ground and rolled into a shallow hole. The mouse ran to the hole and reached in to pull out the walnut so that it could crack the shell and eat it. But the hole was just small enough that the mouse could not pull it out. With both its paws wrapped around, the walnut was too wide to get back up out of the hole. The crow, meanwhile, was pretty unhappy at being tricked out of his supper. He was pretty hangry. He began to shout at the mouse below, who couldn't leave because he was still holding on to that walnut, trying and failing to pull it back out of the hole in the ground. Now, if the two of them had worked together, They might both have gotten to enjoy some of that walnut, and their bellies would be full. The crow could have pecked its sharp beak down into the hole and broken up the walnut into smaller pieces. Then the mouse could have reached in and picked each piece out one at a time. But instead, the two of them were stuck there, hungry, arguing with each other constantly. The mouse because it couldn't let go, and the crow because it couldn't hold on. The end.
Good morning. Thanks again to our choir for braving the cold outside and being stalwart as always and helping provide beautiful music for our services. And thank you everyone for your patience as we navigate changing circumstances and changing technologies to do our best to bring services every Sunday morning. And thank you, Mark, for that beautiful stewardship message, right on the mark, and you really touched my heart. So I appreciate your passion and your love that you bring to this position. This is a time in our service when we share joys and sorrows submitted by members of our congregation. After each that I share, please respond by saying, "We hold you in our hearts." Two joys this week from Margaret Lindquist. Margaret says, last week my daughter and I received a wonderful surprise. My daughter Jean asked Dennis Sweeney to make a holder for a set of cherished chisels that her grandfather brought from Sweden in 1927. Thinking that a wooden drawer organizer was in the works, it was a delight when Dennis came by with a magnificent cherry and walnut display box with embedded magnets to hold the chisels in place. We were both overwhelmed by the functionality, incredible beauty, and Dennis's fine craftsmanship. And later in the week, there was the excellent article in Mount Lebanon magazine about the anniversary of Sunnyhill. Thanks to those early risk takers who made it possible for us to have such a special place to eventually gather once more. To Margaret, Jean, Dennis, and our Sunnyhill founders and sustainers, we hold you in our hearts. Please join me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. We take this moment to remember why we are here, to comfort one another, to join our voices in song, to speak truths, even hard truths, to take part in the great dance of life. May we have light to see that which calls to be seen. May we have stillness to hear that which calls to be heard. May we have clarity to know that which calls to be known. We pause now for a moment of shared silence. There is much to sing about, both in praise and lament. There is much to dance about, whether light of mood or heavy. There is much to share with one another in plenitude or in scarcity. Let us sing what is in our hearts. Let us dance with the spirit of the holy. Let us share what we have been given in love. Amen.
Still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
This reading is entitled A Covenant Invites Relationship, and it was written by Lisa Ward.
A covenant is not a definition of a relationship. It is the framework for our relating. A covenant leaves room for chance and change. It calls us to be humble and willing to evolve. It claims, I will abide with you in this common endeavor, be present as best I can in our becoming. This calls for a level of trust, courage, and sacrifice that needs to be nurtured, renewed, and affirmed on a regular basis.
A creed creates a static truth, something that does not incorporate new insights and realities. A covenant is a dance of co-creation, keeping in step with one another in the flow of our lives.
A creed seeks uniformity and a unison voice. A covenant seeks harmony and a shared voice. Sometimes we may arrive at a unison, but it's not required.
A creed gives authority to the statement. A covenant gives authority to shared intention.
A creed creates an us and a them. A covenant invites relationship.
A creed is a prescription that must be relied on. A covenant relies on the treasures of shared truth.
The overall trust within this covenant is in the truth, capital T, truth. Something which no one can fully see, yet something which each and every person can come to know in glimpses, in another story, in epiphanies. Truth is ever changing in our seeking to understand because of our limited perspectives. We grow into a deeper sense of the meaning of all things when we take our journeys seriously with a full heart and mind.
The courage within this covenant is the acceptance and celebration of life with all its challenges, pain, ironies, and joys. And the sacrifice within this covenant is in the letting go of dogma, of assumptions, of control, and giving over to a greater wisdom which comes to us in bits and pieces. The task of this covenant is to take responsibility for the freedom we espouse. We know that we are interconnected and that what we do creates ripples of hope or despair, of affirmation or negation. What we do with and for one another is powerful and beyond our imagining. Thanks, Brad. My topic for today is covenant and promises that matter. But I'm going to get there through a slightly circuitous route that begins with the recent actions and statements of a certain NFL quarterback. As I'm sure many of you are aware, Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers has been in the news a lot in the past week, and not in a good way. As described by Frank Bruni in the New York Times this week, Rodgers didn't just make the irresponsible choice not to be vaccinated, although nearly 95% of his fellow players in the National Football League were doing the right thing. He also misled those players, calling himself immunized, and he ditched masks in situations where he wasn't supposed to, exempting himself from rules that lesser mortals obeyed. When he tested positive for the coronavirus and was called out and sidelined, he took a defiant tack, disseminating misinformation about vaccines in the service of promulgating his own special medical insights. Bruni notes that many vaccine holdouts love to rail against what they see as the arrogance of the so-called establishment or elites. But what of the arrogance of people who put their own intuition above others' erudition, who come late to the game but proclaim that they alone know the true score? Where's the humility in that? Where indeed? We've seen and heard stories like that of Rodgers time and again over the past year or so. It's both startling and appalling just how many people are willing to throw science under the bus in order to do whatever they feel like doing and genuflect to the false idol of individual liberty over and above any concern for the common good. The underlying dynamic at work here has its roots in part, believe it or not, in competing conceptions of salvation. As UU Minister David Pyle wrote recently, one way to understand what is happening in our country is the inevitable end result of theologies of personal salvation, whether they are Christian conceptions of a personal relationship with Jesus or Emersonian individualism, or the just plain selfish greed at the heart of capitalism. Theologies of personal rather than communal salvation have blended with American egotism to produce a society where we cannot even wear masks or get a vaccine unless someone convinces us it is in our own personal interest, and perhaps not even then. I get it, Pyle says. People respond to theologies of personal salvation. It is effective as an evangelism tool because it does synchronize and affirm that part of many people, including myself, who want to feel special, set apart, better than. Communal salvation, Pyle concludes, is a much harder sell because it runs contrary to the tendency towards individualism and ego that seem built into society, particularly white dominant society. Such theologies of communal salvation are running against the prevailing winds of our culture. But isn't that what religion is supposed to do? Call us to transformation. This tension between individual versus communal salvation has been at the heart of our national debate since the founding of this country. And one way of bridging this gap, or moving from individual concern to communal concern, is through the concept and practice of covenant. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition has its roots in Puritanism, which quite rightly has been criticized because of the exclusive way in which Puritanism was practiced. The Puritans came to America not to establish religious freedom for all, but only for themselves. And they were ruthless and cruel to anyone who did not belong to their group, including the indigenous peoples whose land they stole and whose lives they ended in shocking numbers through murder and through the spread of disease. On the other hand, the Puritan conception of covenant, if applied in a more inclusive way, is a great gift to us, and it continues to be a bedrock of our UU faith. In his famous sermon, A Model of Christian Charity, John Winthrop, the great Puritan leader and organizer of the 1630 ocean voyage from England to America, stated, "We must uphold a familiar commerce together in all meekness, gentleness, patience, and liberality. We must delight in each other, make others' conditions our own, rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together, always having before our eyes our commission and community in the work, our community as members of the same body. The sentiment that Winthrop conveyed in this passage is one that is echoed in many of the early Puritan covenants of New England, including this example from 1629. We covenant with the Lord and one with another, and do bind ourselves in the presence of God to walk together in all his ways, according as he is pleased to reveal himself unto us in his blessed word of truth. Two phrases that stand out for me in this covenant of the Salem Church from 1629 are one with another and unto us. In effect, the Salem Church, along with many other congregations of the time with similar covenants, was making the claim that the ultimate religious authority in determining God's ways were the people of the church walking together in a covenant that extends not just upward toward God, but also outward toward one another. What one does not find in any of these early covenants is anything resembling a creed or clear doctrinal statement. As William E. Barton, a foremost authority on Puritanism, has written, the absence of formal confessions of faith was not in any way due to carelessness on the part of the early Congregationalists as to what their members should believe. Church membership in Congregationalism was based not on the acceptance of a formal creed, but on assent to a covenant. And this willing assent to a covenant is what I think is sorely missing in our country today. In the absence of covenant, any idea of liberty becomes a grotesque celebration of reckless individualism. Individualism of the sort that results in attitudes and behaviors like those of Aaron Rodgers and hundreds of thousands of others who are resolute in thinking only of themselves rather than acting from concern for the common good. Much has been said and written about increased polarization in contemporary American political, economic, social, and religious life. There is not just a gap, but an apparent chasm between rich and poor, black and white, conservative and liberal, and between and among various religious and ethnic groups. As a result of this growing trend toward polarization, there is not much middle ground, and earnest discussions and reasoned debates have grown more sparse, while shouting matches have flourished. In many ways, we as a nation have turned far away from John Winthrop's exhortation to delight in each other, make others' conditions our own, rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together, always having before our eyes our commission and community in the work, our community as members of the same body. Some time ago, we seem to have moved away from the idea of covenant altogether as an organizing principle and toward the idea of social contract. The essential difference between these two ideas is that a social contract is based on an exchange, a quid pro quo of some sort, whereas covenant is based on loyalty to shared aspirations. Contract is conditional and limited. Covenant, on the other hand, demands loyalty, but can be broken and renewed again and again without losing its strength. We are living in an era when the social contract that existed for many decades or centuries is seen as having broken down altogether. There is less and less a sense that any social contract exists at all, and that instead, American liberty is an every man for himself form of governance. This notion is disturbing in that it conceptualizes freedom as originating in a neo-feudal idea of the protection of personal property. And freedom is seen as freedom from something rather than freedom for something. Covenant, on the other hand, can help us reimagine freedom as a means for responsible action toward our best and highest aspirations and loyalties. Loyalties that were expressed so well in many of the early Puritan covenants as walking together in mutual love and respect, with all love and mutual watchfulness to the building up of one another in faith and love. I hope and pray that we as members of this congregation and as members of our larger communities will call ourselves and others back to the idea and practice of covenant again and again, and that in so doing we might begin to heal as a people and as a nation. May it be so. Amen.
And now it's time for our morning offering. We do not have a designated morning offering this morning, but if you'd like to make a gift to Sunnyhill via our online giving system, you can do so one of two ways. You can go to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says Online Giving, and then follow the instructions. Once you get to the drop-down menu, just choose either 2021 pledge collections for payments toward your pledge, or non-pledge collections for any other gifts, which, as mentioned earlier by Mark, is very important to the running of this church. Or you can give by text at 412-324-3130. Thank you very much for your generosity. Thank you.
And one other thing I'll note, if you're curious about how you can make your pledge this year, we do have a button on our website at sunnyhill.org that says 2022 pledge. So just go to sunnyhill.org and you'll see that button. Click on it and it'll walk you through the steps to make that pledge. Thank you.
My life goes on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the ring, the far off hymn that hails the new
Please join me in saying the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
These closing words, written by Michael Hennon, were inspired by the Salem Covenant of 1629, which I mentioned earlier. We covenant with one another and do bind ourselves together in the presence of this religious community to express our deepest and most cherished convictions as they are borne by each person to find a common vision for a better world, to seek the life of the Spirit as it is known by each person, choosing with reverence its name, and to walk together in the way of truth and love, as it is shown to us and to all people, in word and in deed. Go in peace.